This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, MICHAEL COVEL. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. If you're an American, you probably know about the company Best Buy, a big box store with electronics. It's been around for a long time. What you probably don't know is that it almost died about a decade ago, 2012. Then they hired a CEO, a guy named Hubert Joly, and he turned the company around. This was no small project, no small feat. Taking a company in the wake of the Amazon explosion, a big box retailer, and moving it forward and kicking some tail. Today, Hubert and I discuss his new book, The Heart of Business, Leadership Principles for the Next Era of Capitalism. But we also discuss that turnaround of Best Buy, because that's the fun thing of this podcast, to get behind the scenes, to find out how the leaders, the big dogs, do something at the highest level. Now, you might say to yourself, how is that relevant to me? If you don't think there's a lesson in how Best Buy turned it around, that you can use that lesson for your own life and apply it to your own life, you've already lost. Look, we don't have enough time in a lifetime to make all the mistakes to learn everything. So we have to learn from other people. We have to live vicariously through them. And today we get to live vicariously through the former CEO of Best Buy and learn how he turned Best Buy around. Without any further delay, let's jump right into my conversation with Hubert Joly. Talk a little Best Buy and a little of the heart of business. I've been in Asia since 2013. I left in early 2013 to come to Asia on a speaking tour, and then I stayed. That's an interesting date, 2013, because before that I was in San Diego, and I can actually remember buying some things at a Best Buy before I came to Asia. I remember where the Best Buy was over near the mall in San Diego.
Of course, we have many Best Buys in San Diego. Thank you for shopping with us.
Well, I got to tell you, though, I remember the experience back in the day, and this would have been before you. I would have thought, this is one of the places that I might have to go if I need something, but man, I sure don't want to go there. I mean, it was one of those feelings, right? People are going to chuckle a little bit when they find out where I'm leading with all this, but it was really true. It was one of those places where it's kind of like you go there and you're like, okay, they'll probably have some stuff I need. No one really knows what's going on. No one really cares. You experienced this yourself, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, because before taking the job, Best Buy had been this great company, right, for many, many years. But back in 2012, when I was looking at the job, I did some mystery shopping, Mike. And I saw the same thing, meaning the staff was disengaged to a large degree, and the stores didn't look attractive. They didn't look exciting. In a sense, that created the opportunity, right? Because there was only one way to go, which was up.
Now, what was mystery shopping exactly? Here you are, you're somebody that is looking to take the job to be the CEO of Best Buy. And so what did mystery shopping entail exactly? We can all kind of imagine, but what did you do?
Well, there was 2 store visits. I remember the first one was in a store in Edina, just south of Minneapolis. And I go into that store. That's an old store. It looks dusty and cavernous. And I'm looking around. I see a lot of space dedicated to physical media, right? A dying category in the physical world. So video games and CDs. And then I end up buying something. I end up buying a screen shield for my phone, probably something $18 and so forth. And of course, you want it to be installed properly, right? And so I asked the associates to install it for me. They didn't want to charge me money for that. And I said, well, if I wanted to just get it, I would have bought it online. I'm really looking for help. And you're going to nickel and dime me. And the associates probably were told to do this, of course, by management. And frankly, they didn't seem to take any interest in that. I experienced a disengagement. That was mystery shopping experience number one. The second one was in a better store in Richfield near the headquarters of Best Buy. Brighter store, newer, better experience. I bought a phone, a flip phone, so you're going to laugh at me because I could get it for $0. I was really cheap, right? Because you got subsidies from the carrier.
I had a flip phone. I think I had a Motorola flip phone in 2012.
Okay, so mine was an LG flip phone for $0, so couldn't beat that. But then I wanted it to be connected internationally because my family is international. And so when I went back home, I tried to call internationally and it had not been properly set up. And then I called the 1-800 number. Oh my God, I got the runaround. I called the store. I got a runaround. And so it was just a miserable experience. And so my conclusion was, number one, actually, the world needs Best Buy. We need help, as customers. And B, the quality of service had gone down, which was entirely self-inflicted. And so that is one of the things that led me to believe there was an opportunity.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back in time. Before you came to Best Buy, you were at a company, and I had to Google it to find out what the businesses were. It was a privately held company, Carlson Companies. For example, Radisson Hotels might be the name that people would instantly recognize. A lot of other properties and businesses in that conglomerate, that privately held company. What I want to do is I want to take you back in time because the idea of our conversation today is what can us mere mortals, so to speak, that do not become the CEO of these very, very large operations. And look, it's like the NBA basketball teams. I mean, how many people play NBA basketball? How many people become the CEO of a very large company? I mean, look, you still got to put your shoes on. You still got to put your pants on. But it is one of those unique positions where most people don't ever experience it. However, what I want to pull from you today is what can we all learn that you saw along this journey? I want to take you back before Carlson, obviously before Best Buy. Give me Hubert at age 16. Where are you? What are you thinking? What are you doing? You were not imagining at age 16 that you would be the future CEO of Best Buy.
So Mike, long time ago, I was growing up in France, in northern France. I was in high school. I did have in my mind that one day I would be in business, and I had the aspiration to lead maybe a division of a company or lead in business. That was my aspiration. I was, in a sense, a nerd, not from a computer science standpoint, but I was very focused on learning in school. I was doing well academically. So that's the old Hubert from a long time ago.
Okay, give me the moment where something starts to happen, the trigger, a mentor. I don't know, between age 16 and 22, was there some kind of trigger that you can recall that put you on this journey of discovery that led to ultimately, look, it's a pretty dang nice resume point to say CEO of these rather large companies. I want to find out and pull apart what was going on in young you.
I was on a good track. I went to the best business school in France. I joined McKinsey & Company. So academically and professionally, I was doing well. In terms of key milestone that really changed my trajectory, I think ultimately in a good way. Because if we step back, the old image of business is all about being smart, being the smartest person in the room. That's for the leaders, power, fame, glory, and money, and profit maximization, which I think is very much 20th century and is so dated and incomplete and inappropriate if we want to get out of the mess we're in today. So there was a number of milestones, Mike, that really changed my trajectory. One was learning from a McKinsey client who told me where the purpose of a corporation, that was early 1990s, is not to make money. Profit is an outcome. You have to focus on people first, then customers, then profit, and treat profit as an outcome. That was a very important milestone for me. The second important milestone was two friends who were monks, suggested that we write together an article in a theology and philosophy journal about work. Why do we work? Is work a curse, a punishment because some dude sinned in paradise? Is it something we do so that we can do something else? Or is it part of our quest for meaning, our calling to do something good in the world? Of course, I choose the latter. And that has influenced how I think about business. At the end of the day, I think about a company as a human organization made of individuals working together in pursuit of a goal. And if you step back, I don't know how you want to be remembered at the end of your life, Mike. Me, It's not going to be at what age I got the VP title or at what age I made so much money. It's what kind of individual, what kind of leader, what impact I had on people around me and on the world. And that led me to continued reflection on that in the mid-2000s. I had a bit of a midlife crisis. In some ways, I'd gotten to the top. I'd been a McKinsey partner. I was working at Vivendi Universal. I was part of the executive team there. And I felt emptiness. It was the top of the first mountain, right? To quote a book. It was empty. And so I had to do some soul searching. When you cannot go outside, like in this COVID crisis, you have to go inside and look at who we are and who do we want to be. So I did the spiritual exercises of Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, to really try to discern my calling in life and ultimately to decide what my purpose in life was going to be. And my purpose, the way I summarize it, is I want to make a positive difference on people around me and use the platform I have to make a positive difference in the world. So it's not about power, fame, glory, or money. It's about meaning and impact and joy. And so when I got to Best Buy...
Before we get to Best Buy, let me keep you at some things that you just said. First, this word work. I was writing down myself, work for me, work for Mike, work equals art. It's a different way to phrase it. Now, I'm also looking at the dedication of your book. Work is love made visible. Well, you could also say art is love made visible. Let's talk about the word work, though, because it does have some bad connotations. Art is a much nicer word to describe what we're talking about, but work is the word that we all know. It's the word that we have to work with, so to speak. Let's talk about this word, because I think there is, for people at different stages of their life, depending on what they're doing, this word can have great meaning, or this word can be a burden.
Yes. I'll tell you, talking about words, in French, work, the word is travail, which comes from the Latin tripalium, which is an instrument of torture.
There we go, right?
That's what it is. Because in the Western world, in the monotheist faith, it all goes back to this dude who sinned in paradise. And so we have this image of work as a punishment. And actually, a rabbi, I was doing a talk in the 90s about all of these things. And at the end of the talk, a rabbi came to me and said, Hubert, do you know that man used to work in paradise? And I said, yes, I do know this, Rabbi. In fact, yes, in the Genesis, God gave us the earth to embellish it. So originally, work was not a bad thing. But yes, this original sin led us for work to be hard. And for many, many centuries, and for many people still today, work is hard, is painful. There is an epidemic of disengagement at work. But I think that there's an alternative. And I love what you're saying, Mike, about art and the craft of what we do. And it's all about this question of why do we work? What is our intent? In Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, this is this guy, this psychiatrist who was in a Nazi camp. And everybody around him was dying. But he managed to not die by having positive thoughts about his wife and what he would do after the war. So this question of meaning is what gives joy in our life. And magic happens, human magic happens, when we can connect what drives us with the purpose of the company we work at. When that connection can happen, and it doesn't need to be in healthcare, it doesn't need to be in Calcutta with Mother Teresa. It can be at Best Buy, it can be in your podcast. If you can connect what drives you as an individual intimately with the purpose of the company, human magic happens.
Doing this podcast, it probably will not surprise you that I don't recall names off the top of my head, but it will not surprise you that I've had McKinsey partners come on to the show. Some have been great. Most of them probably have been great. However, I have seen, once I had a few McKinsey folks on, I started to get more and more McKinsey folks, PR firms and whatnot, saying, hey, you should have this. And I started to realize that there was a lot of sameness. There was almost a seemingly lack of energy. I'm generalizing a little bit there. You can probably kick me in the butt for that. But I'm detecting in you a certain amount of enthusiasm and charisma. Is that natural, inherent in you, or is that something you learned?
Oh, I love your question because it's about leadership. Are we born leaders or can you become a leader? I believe you can become a leader. One of the things that was another key milestone for me, Mike, was working with a coach, the wonderful Marshall Goldsmith, the father of all executive leadership coaches, at least in the US. And I started to work with Marshall back in 2009. Before that, if somebody had told me that Jack is working with a coach, I would have said, what's wrong with Jack, right? Who needs a coach? The truth is, if you look at tennis players, exactly 100% of the top 100 tennis players in the world have a coach. You talked about the NBA. 100% of the NBA teams have a coach. So why is it that we as leaders are so good that we don't need a coach to help us get better?
But at one time you were like, I don't need any of that stuff, right?
That's right. And then in 2009, my head of HR at Carlson, Elizabeth Bastoni, said, would you like to work with a coach? And it's not that I was not performing, but she said, do you want to work on something and get better at something? Initially, this was hard, right? Because let me tell the story. He did a 360 with my direct reports and the board. And some of it was good and some of it was not so good. And my reaction was, who said that? What's wrong with them, right? It was a long process for me to learn about not feedback, but feed forward. What can I decide that I want to get better at? When I play tennis with a coach, I'm working on improving my forehand. When I ski, I like to ski with an instructor. So I like to improve how I ski in the moguls. In business, as a leader, what do I want to get better at? One of the things I learned from Marshall that I worked on was how to show up as a leader. If you're a leader, I don't care what level, whether it's a store general manager, a supervisor, a CEO, doesn't matter. People look up to you, look at how your demeanor, your level of energy. A key role we have as leaders is to create energy. Energy, in physics, we believe that energy is a finite quantity. In human organization, it's not a finite. You can create energy.
It can't be fake. It has to be authentic.
It has to be authentic, exactly. But you do need to decide how you're going to show up today. I love this phrase that I'm not the product of my circumstances, I'm the product of my decisions, meaning all sorts of things are going to happen around me that I don't control, right? And wisdom is about knowing what you can influence and what you cannot. As a leader, you have to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Because if your temperature goes up and down, you freak people out. So let me give you an example. Back in January of 2014 at Best Buy, we had a good run after I started, but during 2 months, our sales, November, December, which is an important period of time for us, were not in line with expectations. And so in January, we would have to report that to the street. So the day before, I gathered our team of officers and I said, these are the results. They were not surprised because they'd been in the arena to produce the results. The question for us tomorrow is, how do we show up tomorrow? Do we show up defeated? We surrender because everybody who thought Best Buy was going to die was right. Or do we show up and ask ourselves, why do we fall, Bruce? Like in the Batman movie, and of course, so that we can learn how to pick ourselves up. Or like in the movie Any Given Sunday with Al Pacino, probably everybody remember that scene at halftime where Al Pacino's got this wonderful motivational speech where he tells his team that they can win. And so we didn't fake it, meaning we had made mistakes. So we said, we're going to look at the mistakes, self-included, and we're going to correct them. And then tomorrow we're going to tell the street, look, these are the results. We created these results. We've made mistakes. We're going to correct them and we're going to get back on track. That's a decision we make. And our role as leaders is to create an environment where others on the team can be their best, as opposed to, I used to think that my role as a leader was to come up with the best answers, impress everybody with how smart I was, and make sure that everybody knew how smart I was. No, that's not my role. It's much better if everybody does their thing, and my role is to create an environment that can unleash human magic. That's what I think.
Let me take you to Carlson for a moment. Carlson's a privately held company. Can I assume that, yes, you were being measured for your performance at Carlson? A privately held company versus the publicly held Best Buy, a lot more quarterly performance pressures in public. Is that a fair assessment that the reporting pressures would have been very different?
Not really, Mike. I've worked in family-owned companies like Carlson. I've worked in private equity-owned company, Carlson Wagonlit Travel, which is the travel management company partly owned by Carlson. That was the CEO of, before I was the CEO of Carlson, was partly owned by One Equity Partners. And then I was the CEO of Best Buy. I think in all cases, you have performance pressures. You have to perform. And on all of the dimensions, it's not just shareholders, but all of the dimension. And your role as a leader, again, is to decide how you're going to navigate through that and how you're going to meet the needs of your various stakeholders. but not be a slave. I hate it when you have a leader who says, oh, I have to do this because people, quote unquote, are making me do this, right? No, you're the captain of your soul. You're the captain of your destiny. And you get to decide how you're going to drive. Now, I don't want to minimize the short-term performance, whether it's in public or private. Of course, you have to perform, and you have to make sure that you do this with a focus on a North Star, which is where you want to take the place. So it's balancing short-term and long-term. That's what you have to do, irrespective of the business you're in.
I'm going to take you back in time from the mystery shopper standpoint, what you did, the kind of turnaround at Best Buy, but we're jumping ahead a little bit. At that point where you're the CEO of Best Buy, you're also having the chance, and this is the reason I bring up the performance pressures in public, is you're also having a chance to witness something very unique in America at the time, which is the rise of Amazon. And best that I can tell with Amazon, for whatever reason, Jeff Bezos was allowed to operate without performance pressures for like a decade. The stock languished and no one seemed to care. And that strategy, or at least that strategy of not having the pressure, which must have been planned, ended up in hindsight looking pretty nice. I'm just curious your perspective on this, because you were talking about profits equal outcome. Okay, I start to think process versus outcome. If you have a certain process, the outcome might not be perfectly regular every quarter. There might be some ups and downs. Speak to this idea where we are perhaps, and maybe you're going to have a difference of opinion, perhaps we can often measure ourselves too much to the detriment of the success of the operation.
I think you're making an excellent point. Amazon is this amazing success story, whether you measure it from a customer standpoint, a growth standpoint, and of course, a shareholder value creation standpoint. It has invented an entire industry and ways of working and so forth. It's not a perfect company, of course. So I think Jeff has set a model of focusing on the customer and focusing on finding ways to do great things. He's got this wonderful approach to failing. He says he's got an immense amount of experience with failing. He's really good at it.
It's like a venture capital mindset, really.
Yeah, they fail a lot. And so this idea that as a public company, you can focus on doing the right thing for the long term. It's an extreme case because he's been masterful at this. Not all of us have been able to make the quarterly reports as negligible as Amazon, but I think it's still a great source of inspiration, frankly. And being focused on your North Star and then communicating with all of your stakeholders. I told our shareholders that our purpose at Best Buy was not to make money. It was an outcome. And our purpose was, as we said, to enrich lives through technology for our customers. But I also care deeply about our shareholders because they take care of our retirement fund. So that's really important. You have to perform, but you should not perform at the detriment of doing the right thing. And we saw that during the COVID crisis. There were so many great examples of leadership focusing on the safety of the employees and the customers and doing the right thing for them, neglecting, frankly, are we going to hit our guidance, in Q2 of 2020? That was irrelevant. I admire these leaders who led from that standpoint.
So let me take you back in time where we started the conversation. You're that mystery shopper. You've done your mystery shopping. You say, you know what? I think I can do some magic here. And that's in your gut feel. You wouldn't take the job if you didn't think you could do something. So you get in there. You show up at Best Buy. And again, I lay out in the beginning, I kind of know what Best Buy was like in 2012. It was kind of like, whatever. What are some of the first steps you take and why when you start as CEO of Best Buy?
At the time, everybody thought we were going to die. And the advice I was getting was cut. You're going to have to close stores, cut headcounts. And frankly, we did the opposite. One of the first thing I did was spend my first week on the job working in stores. So I had my blue shirt as a Best Buy associate, my khaki slacks at the time. I had a CEO in training badge.
Hold on, CEO in training?
Yes.
Okay. There was only one of those, right? So
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we all got a kick out of that. The reason why I wanted to do this, I wanted to learn to listen to people. So in a term, it's people first. Listen to people on the front line, what they were observing.
Why did you not do the traditional way of slash and burn? What was the thinking there? Because that would have been a typical process, right? Tourniquet stuff, cut off the dead weight, and somehow or another, it's all going to work out. Why did you choose an entirely different way?
I had done a good number of turnaround in my previous life, so that was not my first one. And for my diagnosis of Best Buy, I believe that the world needed Best Buy. Customers needed Best Buy. The vendors also needed Best Buy because the vendors spend billions of dollars on R&D and they need a place where to showcase it. There was a reason for being for Best Buy, and the problems of Best Buy were essentially self-inflicted. And they started with the lack of engagement of the employees, and the lack of a good experience for the customers. I studied with people, listening to the frontliners. I studied with people, making sure I had the right team at the top. I'm a bit of a Maoist, so I believe fish rot from the head. Turn around, you have to make sure you have the right team. And then from a lever standpoint, Mike, I have this view. Turn around, your number one priority is see how you can increase revenue. Because it's amazing what revenue can do, right?
Okay, it covers up a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors, right?
Exactly. And then as you're going to go after cost, because our cost structure was bloated and we needed to get our cost structure in line, there the first thing you go for is reducing what I call non-salary expenses, which is all of the elements of the cost structure that has nothing to do with people. And at most companies, frankly, it's the bulk of the cost structure. Let me give you an example. At Best Buy, do we sell a lot of TVs? Yes, we do. They're large, they're thin, so they break. At the time, we were breaking about, you're going to get a kick, about $200 million worth of TVs every year at any point in the process.
That will show up on the balance sheet.
Exactly. If you can reduce that by 50%, the math is simple. You save $100 million. We've done a survey. Exactly 0% of customers want to buy a broken TV. So make customers happy, and get your cost structure in line. Over time, between 2012 and 2020, at Best Buy, we reduced our cost structure by about $2 billion. So it's real money. And about 2/3 or 3/4 of that was non-salary expenses. The other thing you look at is how to optimize benefits. So in the US, a big element of employee benefits is healthcare cost. Well, if your employee population is healthier and if you're self-insured, your healthcare costs will go down. And you can also negotiate with insurance companies and do wellness program and so forth. And so number one, increase revenue. Number two, reduce non-salary expenses. Number three, optimize benefits. If 1 + 2 + 3 is not sufficient, then you go after headcount, but you do it as a last resort and you do it wisely. So we reduced management layers. We reduced the focus on ancillary activities that were not strategic. And then you look at, can I redeploy the people? Because it's a different thing to eliminate positions. You can still redeploy the people. Let me give you an example. Later on, we decided to close the so-called Best Buy mobile standalone stores that are mall-based, small, 1,000 square foot stores focused on mobile telephony. At some points back in 2006 and 2008, they made sense. Later on, they didn't make any business sense. Let's agree to that. There was about 1,000 people working in these stores. At Best Buy at the time, we had about 125,000 people. And these were highly skilled individuals. And so instead of telling them, thanks, but no thanks, we said, we're going to close these stores. Now, if you would like, we are going to work with you and we're going to work really hard to find you another job at Best Buy, right? Because at Best Buy in stores, you have after everything we did, we still had about a 30% turnover. So can we redeploy these people? And oftentimes there was a big box store not far from the mall where you had the standalone store. So it's this human approach. People sometimes see human beings, employees, as a resource or sometimes as the problem. I see them as the source of inspiration, as the source of magic. Again, a company is a human organization made of individuals working together. And so if you can do this approach, which is my turnaround manual, I think it creates incredible outcomes. And that's essentially what we did. So we did the opposite of the cut approach.
Speak to me about the idea of automation. Of course, yes, a Best Buy experience, you can come in and you want to see, feel, and touch some of these new gadgets and TVs and stuff like that. But of course, in the modern age, automation is changing things dramatically for a lot of companies. And it sure seems like, as an outsider looking in, not somebody who's an employee right now, but as an outsider looking in, I can imagine it would be harder and harder to motivate folks, to motivate employees, to keep them engaged when perhaps they think, I might be gone soon. I don't want to pick on Amazon, but I can think of folks that are working on the front lines of Amazon. It's often pick and pack and filling boxes. And it sure seems like to everybody that's paying attention, that will eventually be as automated as you can possibly be. I'm just trying to pick your mind here about this notion of automation and then keeping humans motivated, because it's got to be a little depressing for younger people and people starting out on some of these frontline jobs. Look, back in the day, one of my last jobs I had was 19 years old working in the stock room of Circuit City. So I've been there. You know what I mean?
I love that, Mike. This is the story of the last 200 years, right? We've had technology innovation, process improvement. So jobs have been eliminated. In the 19th century, everybody was working in agriculture and then in manufacturing plants, and now it's evolved. So this is the creative destruction that Schumpeter talks about. Let's make it very concrete. At Best Buy, actually, when I was 16, my first job was to put price tags on vegetable cans in a supermarket in France. Right? At Best Buy on Sundays, you would have the price change. You would have employees putting the price tags, the new price tags, everywhere throughout the store. Not really a fulfilling activity, right? Not a lot of meaning into this. One of the things we've done is we now have in many of the stores digital price tags, which actually have better information. It's easier to update. So you can change prices. Online, you can change prices every minute. Now in the stores, you can do the same. You have a choice as a company. You can say, no, I'm going to resist this and I'm going to stay with 19th century technology. That's a sure way to die, right? Or I'm going to do my best to do two things simultaneously. Continuously find ways to innovate for the customer so that I can grow the business. And in parallel, continuously find ways for me to improve the efficiency of our operations. So the blue shirt employees who are moving the price tags, the paper price tags, of course, the hours that we invest in that have been reduced, but at the same time, we're adding what we call in-home advisors. That are people who, if you need, I hope everybody listening will take advantage of this Best Buy service. It's a free infomercial here. If your need is a bit complex, you're redoing your family room or your kitchen or your patio, it's hard to have the conversation online or in the store. So we'll come to you. We'll have a professional, almost designer, who will come to you, see what you want to accomplish, develop a proposal, and ultimately the aspiration is for them to become like your CIO or your CTO for your home. That's a very exciting job opportunity, much more exciting than moving price tags around. Now, it's a dynamic world. Of course, the implication of that is that you have to provide opportunities for upskilling for the new jobs and invest in people continuously so that they can do what the customers want. So this is the story of the last 200 years. I think what we have ahead is the same. It comes with opportunities and challenges related to reskilling.
I'll let you escape this question in 1 second, though. Okay, we can look at the last 200 years and we can realize, yes, okay, we keep marching forward. What's your vision of the future? Do we reach a point? I'm talking beyond Best Buy. You're a guy who's seen a lot of different things, a lot of automation that you've seen come in, and a lot of it's been great for all of us, and it's made our lives easier. It's made corporations' lives easier, et cetera. Is there a point in the future where we go too far on automation?
I'm going to broaden your question, Mike.
Feel free, sir. Feel free.
We are at a pivotal moment. I think as we have exited 2020, you would have to be blind not to see that our world is facing a multifaceted crisis. It's a health crisis, of course, an economic crisis, societal crisis with rising inequality, political crisis with the rise of populism and nationalism, geopolitical tensions, an environmental crisis. If we don't get to net zero by 2050, this planet is going to burn at some point. And with the systemic racism that we're experiencing in the US, when your headquarters is in Minneapolis, you know that a city can be on fire. And if, by the way, if the city is burning or the planet is burning, you cannot run a business. And so, Mike, what's the definition of madness, right? Doing the same thing and hoping for a different outcome. That's Albert Einstein, right, who told us this. So the current model on which the economic system has been built over the last 40 years, which is, I would blame two people. Milton Friedman with his idea of primacy of profit and shareholders, and Bob McNamara with his idea of top-down, take a bunch of smart people and they'll figure it out.
By the way, I'm currently in a country that Bob McNamara had some very bad decisions all about.
Exactly. It was, oh my God.
That's a whole different story.
Yes, but it's the same story. The approach we've been pursuing for the last, I'm going to say 40 years, but it could be, you could put a number of 40, 50, is not working. My view, and that's my quest today, because I feel that we're at a point where we need a refoundation of business and capitalism. It's around two things, around purpose and humanity. It's about business pursuing a noble purpose, making a positive difference in the world. It's about putting people at the center. It's about embracing all stakeholders, of course, employees, customers, partners, but also the community and the planet and shareholders, and treating profit as an outcome. It's a paradigm shift where leaders are there to create an environment where human magic can be unleashed in pursuit of that purpose. So to your point, we have to change the way things are done in business. Otherwise, the outcome is for sure grim. There's no denying. You would have to be blind to believe that continuing the way we are is going to create a great outcome.
Hubert, let me press you, not in a controversial way, just in a way to open up the dialogue. You brought it up, and I'm curious to let you expand. Obviously, America in particular is a pretty divided place these days. Half of America probably sees themselves to the left, and half of America sees themselves to the right. And obviously, America, going back a long time ago to the days of slavery, has a foundation that is not pretty. But then again, across the world, you can look North Africa, you can look to Brazil. I mean, there's a lot of places that, even across Asia, a lot of places where slavery is the foundation for a lot of modern life. How do we navigate this issue? Because I know you care about these issues deeply. I know you care about the big picture. It's not just a dollar to you. So how do we navigate something like racism? Because look, I'm a white male, okay? I'm in my early 50s. I kind of just do my thing, so to speak, run my life. And I think most people are kind of like that. I mean, on the edges of the bell curve, there's going to be bad actors on all sides of whatever equation. But how do we navigate this? Because I think if we have some examples of people that are doing really bad stuff, you kind of mentioned one, Minneapolis, whatnot. Okay, if we extrapolate out that everyone, or not everyone, but if we extrapolate out that this is a really, really big problem, I mean, it's kind of frightening because as an outsider being outside of America, I start to wonder, is there this, I don't know, circling the drain kind of thing where America just seems to be going downward in its dialogue?
Yes, this is not about left or right. And certainly if you're a business leader, you're not an elected official. So this is not about that. This is about a few simple things. And of course, I've been personally on a journey on that. As I've shared, I grew up in France where there's racism, but of a different type. Here are a few simple things. America is becoming brown. If you look at the younger generation, it's already the case. It's majority brown, if I'm not mistaken. In our age group, I'm older than you are, Mike, but it's different. So the fact are that this country is becoming brown. If you're in business, do you think that you can win with your customers and with your employees if you decide that you're going to ignore this fact? Let me give an example. If you're in Chicago, there's some parts of Chicago where the local language is really Polish. Do you think it's going to be very smart for the store general manager in that area to have blue shirts who speak Polish? Of course, it's going to be very smart. You want to serve the local community. Do you think it would be very smart for companies to decide that they're going to really get staffed out of a pool that's a quarter, roughly, white male of the overall population? That'd be stupid. Plus the fact that I believe as a human being that teams are better if they're diverse, right? There's a diversity of points of view, of style. I believe, for example, that if it had been Lehman Brothers and sisters instead of Lehman Brothers, it would have been a different outcome.
I've never heard that one before. I like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that's a first starting point. You're going to miss if you don't represent your customer population, your environment. The other thing is, again, my house in Minneapolis is not far from Hennepin Avenue and the area where George Floyd was killed in May of last year. When the city is on fire, you cannot run a business. It's as simple as this. The Target stores, Target is also headquartered in Minneapolis, and the Best Buy stores had to shut down during the upheavals of last year. And so that means that it's our responsibility, I'm going to say as business leaders, to address this and change the trajectory. Oh, by the way, I think as human beings, it's also, if you go into our heart and our soul, it's also our responsibility to make sure that people around us are not miserable. And it's not just about, are you an active racist or not? It's about, if you just go with the flow, you don't change the outcome. So you have to be proactive in changing the outcome in how companies recruit, how they promote, how they choose their suppliers. You have to be an activist to change the outcome. It's like in any business matter. What strikes me, Mike, is that I am impressed by the number of leaders in the last few quarters who've made the personal journey from their head to their heart to realize the pain of our Black African-American colleagues and citizens of the cities in which we live. I remember back in 2016, I did focus groups with our employees of different ethnicity and race, and I was struck. I learned so much from the pain that Black colleagues were going through in their personal life. I got a reverse mentor, the wonderful Laura Gladney, who's taught me so much. For all of these leaders who've gone through the journey, mainly from the head to the heart, on the experience of our Black colleagues, and if you look at the facts, or you also use your brain, you quickly conclude that we have to change the trajectory for all of these reasons. And then, Mike, it becomes like any business problem. Are we good in America at solving business problems? Yes, we are, for the most part. You decide, you set goals, which most companies now have started to do. You develop a strategy and a plan, and then you hold yourself accountable, and our boards are holding management teams accountable. And I'm optimistic if we can stick with it. I come from country, France, that in Europe, right, if we look back at the last 200 years, did France and Germany go after each other's throats a number of times and in the process killed 50 million people? Yes, they did. But then when you look at what happened after World War II, leaders on both sides of the border, and I grew up very close to the German border, so my grandparents were scared of the Germans, right, of the Bosch, as they called them. But after World War II, leaders on both sides decided that we'd had enough. This had to change. In the following, I'm going to say 15 years, everything changed. And today, there are two countries in the world that are as close allies as France and Germany. The answer is no. They are joint at the hip. They are the co-creators of the European Union. They do everything together. If France and Germany were able to do this, that gives me hope that if we stay with it, then we can, in a matter of, it's going to take 10 years, 15 years, we can end systemic racism or make it much smaller. Problems are difficult to solve, but you make them smaller. And when a problem is really small, then it doesn't matter that much anymore, right? Maybe I need to work on being more passionate about this, Mike, but that's what I got for you.
I've had a chance, as I've told you in this conversation, to spend 8 years in Asia. As a white guy in an Asian country, I can say it's been, for me, the most amazing experience. So this is something that we all need to think about too, is that this notion of being a minority or racism or the particular country you're in, the whole thing changes when you move yourself around on the playing board. So here I am as a white guy and I moved to an Asian country. I don't speak the language. I'm in a country where America killed 4 million people. Guess how many people in 8 years have said something negative to me? 0.
Wow.
Yeah. On the flip side, I can look at America and I think maybe I'm lucky to observe this Zen quality that I see in Southeast Asia. I sometimes think that maybe something as simple as that, the mindfulness and the different ways to look at things from an Asian perspective could help America. I don't know if the Asian perspective will ever be introduced really heavily, but there's some real benefits that I've seen personally.
I agree with you. I've learned a lot from the Gita, the Hindu spirituality, from Buddhism. And of course, Asia is not perfect. You and I know that there's places in Asia, including currently, where ugly things are happening.
Of course.
Human beings, we're capable of the best and we're capable of the worst. It's our decision. There's nobody else who decides for us how we want to show up and behave. We get to decide what kind of society we want to live in. We get to decide whether we want to value the other, whether we want to be afraid of the other. That's our decision.
I like the way that you use the word noble. What's our noble purpose, so to speak? You've been outlining your noble purpose pretty clearly. I think people can have differences of opinion, and I know plenty of people listening might be saying, oh my gosh, I've got a different way of looking at it than Hubert, or they might feel like, oh my gosh, I've been labeled something that I'm not. That's not your intention. I know that's not your intention. America is such a complicated situation, and I salute you for being as optimistic as you are. I think being outside of America, I sometimes feel like I'm losing some of my optimism, Well,
I'm a combination of an optimist, inspired by Thomas Jefferson, and also what my compatriot Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about America in the mid-19th century.
Is Tocqueville going to end up being right about everything?
But I'm also a realist, meaning that we have problems. I think it's good to say, my name is Hubert, and I see that our society has problems and that there's great pain and suffering, immense pain and suffering, and immense risks if we continue the way we're doing things. As leaders, it's the combination of a sense of reality and then a desire, an ability to create a future that does not exist yet, but that we can create and that can be a better outcome. I'm 61, I have children, I have 3 wonderful granddaughters. I know that in the next, pick a number, like 10, 15, 20, 25 years, I want to do my best to try to create a better outcome and add my voice and my energy to this necessary refoundation of what I call business and capitalism around purpose and humanity so that we minimize the problems we have today. It doesn't need to continue like this.
I can't be the first, and I apologize, I can't be the first American to, with my 8th grade French long behind me, I can't be the first American to butcher your name. Am I? I can't be the first.
There's a wide range of acceptable pronunciations, and they're all very good. So,
but you gave me the correct one, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Look. My last name is Covevel. Okay, that is shortened from Kovaleski, which is shortened from Kovalauskis, which is Lithuanian. So there you go.
Oh, and my son's first name is Stanislas, which is of course a Polish name from King Stanislas Leczinski, who was also the Duke of Lorraine, and his daughter Maria Leczinska married Louis XV. So that's how that name came to France. There you go.
Perhaps you get your first name butchered. I get my last name butchered. I've actually seen a lot of people spelling Michael wrong recently. They put the E before the A. I don't know where that came from. But anyways, that's a completely different subject. Hubert, the book, The Heart of Business, Leadership Principles for the Next Era of Capitalism. I'm sure we could go on and touch on all kinds of subjects. I thoroughly enjoy your enthusiasm. I still don't know if I know exactly where it came from because I'm guessing there is a wide number of McKinsey consultants that do not have your enthusiasm, that do not have your charisma. So it came from somewhere. You didn't tell me where it came from, but I know it came from somewhere.
It comes from within. Here's a reflection from the last year. Last year has been tough, and this year continues to be tough for many, many people. There's a rising level of anxiety. There's a lot of burnouts, people working from home, sometimes in difficult conditions, learning from home, spending their life on Zoom or Teams or other tools. Critical thing is for us as individuals. Everybody's a leader because we're a leader of our lives, right? We need to spend time with ourselves. We need to be able to recharge. You talked about mindfulness, spending time every day, whether it's exercising, walking, chatting with in an intimate fashion with somebody close, praying, meditating is really critical. There's this image. Remember in the old days when we used to fly around?
How long ago was that? Like 10 years ago? I forgot.
Yeah, Your Honor, I have no recollection, But what I do recollect is that the steward would tell us if the oxygen mask comes down, we have to put it on ourselves first before we help others. And for us as leaders, it's critical that we spend time with ourselves in deciding how we want to show up, what kind of a leader we want to be, what kind of spouse, what kind of father, what kind of son or daughter we want to be. How do we want to be remembered? A great exercise that I would recommend to everybody is write your eulogy. On the day when you're not going to be here anymore, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want people to say on that day? Do you want to be remembered, for example, as the guy who's the best at finding what's not working, the guy who is the best at creating excuses? This leader is amazing. They got the best possible excuses in the world. Or do you want to be remembered as somebody who made a positive difference on people around you, on your family, on your community? When I say these things, none of us are perfect. And by the way, trying to be perfect is an inhuman task. Actually, Eastern philosophy, right? Buddhist. Am I doing my best? Did I do my best today? To be a good father, to be a good son? Did I tell my parents how much I love them? This time within. So it's leadership from the inside out has been part of my journey and where my energy is coming from. It's also tied to forgiving ourselves, being kind to ourselves. Am I perfect every day? Of course I'm not. I think there's a truth that you cannot love others if you don't love yourself. And that starts with forgiving yourself. And then trying today, forgiving yourself or asking others to forgive yourself for what you've done yesterday, and then committing to today and tomorrow and living in the moment of trying to, I'm sounding like a preacher, right? But it's this idea that leadership comes from within and each of us gets to decide how we want to live our lives. We're going to fumble along the way. Life is not linear. Why do we fall, Bruce? It's so that we can learn to pick ourselves up and then be a better person tomorrow.
That's one of the things I love seeing in Saigon, Vietnam, is that no matter where you look, people are hustling. If there's ever been a place that's changed me more to see how people just turned the other cheek and they moved on. They just turned the other cheek and they moved on. And I think there's so much in that, right? And I know you agree. And when you see that in action, it changes you. I become something different when that happens. I can't keep you. We could keep talking all kinds of fun issues. The book, again, The Heart of Business, Leadership Principles for the Next Era of Capitalism. Hubert, where would you like to send people? Is there a website you would like to direct them to?
Oh, thank you, Mike. So the website is my first name, my last name, so hubertjoly.org.
You've probably noticed this in our conversation. I don't take you through a direct linear Q&A session of the book because what I have found, and I think this is true, if the audience gets to know somebody and likes that person and feels their intelligence and feels their passion, they end up listening to 60 Minutes and they're like, wow, I'm going to go check that guy's book out. I'm going to check that lady's book out. It kind of works like that. If they like you, they check your stuff out.
Well, let's agree, Mike, that you have created something very, very special with your podcast. And the world is very grateful that you're providing these opportunities.
I hope it wasn't too far off out on a limb. I hope it was enjoyable.
This was a treat. You're kidding me? This was a treat. Got me to get to know you a little bit. I have to visit you in Vietnam.
Yes, for sure. I can thank the French for all the lovely bread here in Saigon that tries to get me fat.
And of course, if you travel to Hanoi, which I'm sure you've done, you see this beautiful French architecture.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's the one great church. There's one very large Catholic cathedral right here in the heart of Saigon, too.
That was wonderful. I so enjoyed our conversation, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully we'll talk again in the future.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.